Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe. Okay, so we're now going to look at Elder Stevenson's talk called Days Never to Be Forgotten, where he talks about this upcoming decade from 2024 to 2034. I'm going to go back to President Nelson's talk, but I'm still taking a break from that talk because I've already made like maybe 3 or 4 videos about it, and I need to change it up a little bit. And I've really been wanting to take a look at this talk. So this is a talk that I'm probably going to break down into different videos. So this is just kind of like an overview and some really interesting things to point out. Okay, my dear brothers and sisters, the history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in this dispensation is resplendent with divine experiences that demonstrate how the Lord has guided his church. There's one decade in our history, however, that stands strikingly supreme above any other. The decade from 1820 to 1830. Beginning with the prophet Joseph Smith's experience in the Sacred Grove in the spring of 1820, when he saw God the Father and his Son Jesus Christ, and continuing until April 6, 1830. That decade is unlike any other. Okay, so this is important. He's starting by pointing out like the most important, the grandest decade in the history of the church. And then he shows these different pictures like Joseph Smith receiving the gold plates, which we all know, or you should know if you've been watching the channel, he received on Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year, the first of the 2 high holy days. We've done a bunch of videos about that. Continuing, consider these remarkable events. The young prophet conversed with the angel Moroni, translated the gold plates, and published the Book of Mormon. He was the instrument through whom the Aaronic and Melchizedek priesthoods were restored. Yeah, that's kind of a big deal. And then he organized the church. Oliver Cowdery described that era well, quote, "These were days never to be forgotten," end quote. Miraculous events have continued to this very day. May I also be so bold as to suggest that this year we have commenced a decade that may prove to be as momentous as any that has followed that unparalleled founding decade almost 2 centuries ago. Okay, well, this year has certainly been a very interesting year. We're going to have a lot to talk about when I do my New Year's Eve live stream, where we go over everything that I've put down on my spreadsheets. The signs in the heavens have been off the charts this year. The wars going on in the world, things happening in politics. We'll probably have a lot to talk about that by New Year's Eve. So yeah, if there was a year to initiate this incredible decade, I guess 2024 would be that year. Before this year, I would have said 2020, and that was a remarkable year. But this year has just been off the charts in so many ways. Now, before we go into this, I just want it to be known, I am still of the opinion that the second coming, meaning the entire thing, all the appearances, however you want to break it down, can happen anytime, and that some may already have. Adam on Diamond, Joseph Fielding Smith said that the church at large will not know about it. I've done videos. Go to my playlist called Adam on Diamond. Go to my playlist called New Jerusalem. I'm aware of all the appearances, but I think that things can happen in a way that we don't realize unless we have eyes to see and ears to hear. So with that being said, I do not think that you should take this talk and assume that, oh, he just said we're good all the way until 2034. I would not make that assumption. I really wouldn't. And I think a lot of the things that he's talking about in here can happen in the early millennium and still have the same effect that he's talking about in this talk. This talk essentially focuses on the growth of the church, how there's going to be incredible opportunities for the church to grow in lots of opportunities for missionary work and stuff like that. So look at this. Okay. Our decade. That's the name of this section. Let me explain. Between now, 2024 and 2034, we will experience seminal events that will result in extraordinary opportunities to serve, to unite with members and friends and to introduce the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to more people than ever before. So it seems that this is why he's focusing on this decade, that the church is going to be exposed like never before, essentially. Let's take a look at the word seminal. What does it mean that there's going to be seminal events? I'm just going to use the definition in the Cambridge.org dictionary. It says containing important new ideas and having a great influence on later work. Okay, so that's what seminal means. He says we will experience seminal events that will result in all this exposure for the church. Then he shows a picture of President Nelson's 100th birthday celebration, and I did a video about that. There were a lot of interesting things to note. Just go back on my channel, go to videos, and then just go back and you can find that video that I did. Okay, in all the videos leading up to that, I still think that his birthday is highly significant, but okay, so now I have it color-coded. He goes over, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 big things that has or will bring about lots of exposure to the church. So he starts off with President Nelson's birthday. He says, "We just witnessed the power of a truly historic moment as we celebrated with tens of millions." Remember, the church at this point has not yet gotten to 20 million. So tens of millions that would go beyond the church. That'd be like when you have tens with an S at the end, I think of like 20 million or more, because then you have 2 tens, right? Whereas if you just have one, it's just 10 million plus like 7 million more. But tens, that's like 20 million or more. So he's talking about beyond the church. As we celebrated with tens of millions, the 100th birthday of President Russell M. Nelson. And then he talks about what Newsweek said about his birthday, and then New York Times, and points out that there was much international coverage of this event. And that's something that we talked about on this channel in the lead up, because that's what I was looking forward to. I was thinking, what are the different news outlets of the world going to say? Because they're going to want to do a story about this. This is a news story. It's newsworthy. And anyway, that brought international coverage, and Elder Stevenson is pointing that out here. And then he says, how grateful we are that President Nelson's landmark birthday gave us an opportunity to introduce a global audience, okay, to a prophet of God, a celebration never to be forgotten. So right now, we don't really have an easy way to gauge what the effect of that was. These news stories and the broadcast on its global audience, but you never know. There may have been people that were baptized because of this, who became curious about the church. I should have pulled this up. We've been talking about this a lot lately. Okay, let's go to hashtag give. No. Sherry, do prophets see around corners? She talked about the fact. So this is like something that happened before this decade, never to be forgotten. But it seems like there are big things going on right now. They're like really big things. Like this is one of them. In 2020, of all years, President Nelson did the hashtag Give Thanks video. And during the night, he received very specific instructions of how long the video should be, what day it should be released, what time it should be released. And Sherry Dew talks about that in this talk called Prophets Can See Around Corners. And she talked about how the instructions that he received from the Lord went against conventional wisdom, that the experts would never have recommended what he wanted to do with this video message. But then she says, okay, but a prophet had spoken, and we went to work. The result was the hashtag Give Thanks video released on November 20th, 2020. And the results, unprecedented. That video's reach dwarfed anything the church had ever released, especially to those not of our faith. Never in the history of the earth had so many people heard a prophet's voice. prophets see around corners. So I just want to point that out. And it seems like there's going to be many more of these type of things happening. And that's what Elder Stevenson is honing in on. So we don't really know right now what effect President Nelson's birthday had, but it was probably big. Okay, and then he points out the newly renovated church office, the church office building plaza, which has been more tied into Temple Square. They wanted to tie the two blocks into one great whole. So there's been a lot of attention on this, but let's continue. He's just pointing out like this is really an international church because you see that one of the new features is you have all the flags of the world. Not all at one time, they rotate throughout the year, but during the course of 1 year, you do get all the flags of the world in this oval. Okay, so here's the next thing. Okay, contemplate the unprecedented number. Okay, oh my gosh, let's try that again. Contemplate the unprecedented number of temple open houses and dedications that are planned to take place over the next decade. Even the potential of 164 temples and counting. Yeah, especially at the rate that they're being announced. I was talking with Caitlin about this in a live stream, how I don't know what the average has been since President Nelson became president of the church, but like for each conference where he's announced temples, I don't know what the average number has been, but it's got to be somewhere between like 15 to 20. It's probably something like 17, honestly. And it doesn't seem like it's tapering off. It seems like it's pretty steady. So I fully expect that this is going to continue for a while, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, every time a new temple is announced, that comes with the temple open house. And people come across the church that way. Let me know in the comments. Are you someone that found out about the church, that came across the missionaries because you went to a temple open house? Put it in the comments below so everybody can know. Okay, imagine tens of millions. There's that, number again, tens of millions of you and your friends walking through a house of the Lord. The symbolic center of these events will be the rededication of the Salt Lake Temple and the activities associated with it. Ooh, well, I'm excited to see what those activities are going to be. So the rededication and the activities and the open house for the Salt Lake Temple. These certainly will be days never to be forgotten. Okay, here's the next one. The year 2030 will bring opportunities worldwide to commemorate the bicentennial of the organization of the church. Although it is too early to say how the church will recognize this milestone, it will certainly allow us to invite family, friends, colleagues, and distinguished guests to come and see, and to better understand the powerful impact that the church has in the lives of church members. I'm going to make a prediction, just a fun guess. I'm going to guess that they're probably going to release a proclamation, whether we're in the millennium or not at that point. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a proclamation that's released in that year. Just because there was one released for the 200-year anniversary of the first vision. So why not for the official establishment of the church 200 years later? We'll have to wait and see. And then there's a picture of the 2002 Winter Olympics. I was in high school at that time, and I did go to a bobsledding event. Took school off. I think it was like a Friday. It was fun. Anyway, that was a really fun time. If you lived in the Salt Lake area, I thought it was pretty fun. I loved taking tracks downtown and just seeing Salt Lake so much more busy than what I was used to. Gosh, that was a fun time. Okay, so, and that leads us to the last one that he points out. In 2034, thousands of dignitaries, visitors, and athletes from around the world will flood the streets of Salt Lake City, the stage for the Winter Olympic Games. There is perhaps no greater demonstration of worldwide unity than that embodied in the Olympic Games. The eyes of the world will be upon the church, okay, the world, upon the church and its members, affording a multitude of opportunities to volunteer, serve, and share glad tidings through kind deeds, an event never to be forgotten. So just like the temple open houses, if you found the church because of the 2002 Olympics, let me know in the comments below. I'd be interested to know. Okay, now we're going to look at this one a little bit closer. This is me holding one of the Olympic torches for the 2002 Winter Olympics. I was on my mission. I went to the Spain-Barcelona mission, and my mission president had one of these. He's a prominent guy from Ogden, Utah. I don't know if he still lives there or not. But you may want to watch this video right after this, because it's really interesting how the 2034 Olympics were announced. One of the key details is that it was announced on Pioneer Day this year. So of all years, 2024, with as interesting and crazy as it has been, the 2034 Olympics were announced on Pioneer Day. That's when the Saints entered the Salt Lake Valley. That's what initiated the gathering to Salt Lake, but then after that, just gathering, or just like the church being established. And you had Ensign Peak, which Brigham Young had seen in vision. I have that on my spreadsheets. If you go to my spreadsheet called quotes, right here. So click on the 3 lines right here, and then go down to quotes, visions and visitations. I have the account of Brigham Young seeing Ensign Peak, which is a peak just north of the Salt Lake Temple. It has kind of a prominent shape, or it kind of like stands out from the hills and mountains around it. And it's called Ensign Peak because it's an ensign to the nations. It's like symbolically like a gathering point. You know, in the military, you have these flags that are called guidons. They're basically ensigns, where that's where your unit is supposed to gather. It's a gathering, right? And so it's just really interesting that it was Pioneer Day. And on that day, there was a fire behind Ensign Peak, and it was the 177th anniversary of Pioneer Day. So for all those details, watch this video. But I think the 2034 Olympics are going to be a big deal. Okay. Furthermore, I want to read what President Hinckley said about the 2002 Winter Olympics. This is from the April 2002 General Conference. The name of the talk is "The Church Goes Forward." I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read the red highlights, but this will give you a sense of how important that actually was to the church. He says, "The headquarters of the church are in this city, which recently hosted the 19th Winter Olympics. We made a deliberate decision that we would not use this as a time or place to proselytize. But we were confident that out of this significant event would come a wonderful thing for the church." And I can only assume they're going to make that same decision for the 2034 Olympics. Later on, he says, "Well, it all worked out. The visitors came by the hundreds of thousands." Okay, later, television carried the picture to billions of people across the earth. Newspapers and magazines ran story after story. Thousands upon tens of thousands walked through Temple Square, admired the majestic house of the Lord. And by that time, by 2034, the Salt Lake Temple will be all renovated. We're going to have the new visitor centers. I think they're calling them guest houses. So it's going to be very nice for that time. Okay. Admired the majestic house of the Lord, sat in the tabernacle and listened to the matchless music of the choir. More thousands filled this great conference center to watch a wonderful production dealing with the church and its worldwide mission. Other thousands visited the Family History Center. The media were hosted in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building. We were interviewed for television, radio, and the press by correspondents from many parts of this nation and from across the world. I am told that nearly 4,000 stories about the church appeared in the German press alone. Okay, so it was kind of a big deal. It's probably going to be an even bigger deal in 2034. If there were time, I could give you many quotations from the seasoned journalists of the world who wrote in a most laudatory fashion. Skipping forward, we had private interviews with presidents of nations, with ambassadors, with leaders in business and other fields. And then he says this. Okay, in 1849, 2 years after our people first arrived here, and following the discovery of gold in California, many were discouraged. They had struggled to wrest a living from the arid soil. Crickets had devoured their crops. The winter was cold. Many thought they could go to California and get rich. President Brigham Young stood before them and encouraged them to remain, promising that, and let's just read that directly from, well, not directly, but let's go to this other entry that I have. This is my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z, row 348 for Winter Olympics. Okay, this is Brigham Young. You can find this in Brigham Young, The Man and His Work, published 1936, page 128. Brigham Young. God will temper the climate, and we shall build a city and a temple to the Most High God in this place. We will extend our settlements to the east and west, to the north and to the south, and we will build towns and cities by the hundreds and thousands. And thousands of the saints will gather from the nations of the earth. Now, here's the key part in red. This will become the great highway of the nations. Kings and emperors and the noble and wise of the earth will visit us here. Okay, back to President Hinckley, who quotes part of that. He says, "We have witnessed the fulfillment of that prophecy in these recent days." And I don't know, maybe it's only a partial fulfillment because it looks like we're in for round 2. But yeah, President Hinckley saw it as a big deal. I'm excited to see what it's going to be like in 2034. I was talking to Caitlin in the live stream. I asked her, do you think that we're still going to have the Olympics during the millennium? Because I know some people think, no, everything is going to be completely different and changed. And I'm not so sure about that. Neither is Caitlin. Make sure to subscribe to her channel. It's called Anticipating Christ's Return. She's under my featured channels list. But I think that there's going to be a transition, a gradual transition. There's going to be recovery from everything that happens associated with the second coming. But I don't know that everything is just going to be completely decimated and we're going to have to start civilization from scratch. I think there's going to be a lot of things that just transition in a natural way. Everything from the economy to language, like from the languages that we speak now to the pure Adamic language and everything else. And I wouldn't be surprised if the Olympics continue. So if you're like, no, Elder Stevenson said the Olympics and that can't possibly happen during the millennium, I wouldn't be so sure about that. I really wouldn't. Okay, so back to Elder Stevenson's talk. So he's pointing to 2034. Makes sense. So really quick before we continue, and we're getting toward the end here, the 4 things that he pointed out was that gave the church lots of exposure was President Nelson's 100th birthday. And then he talked about the number of temple open houses over the next decade. And then the celebration of the bicentennial of the church in 2030, just 6 years from now. And then the 2034 Winter Olympics in Salt Lake City. And then he reemphasizes that this is a decade never to be forgotten. And then the next section is titled Glad Tidings. Now, I'm not going to read anything from here. That may be in another video. But when I saw Glad Tidings and how that was the name of the next section, I instantly thought about the Christmas carol called We Wish You a Merry Christmas, because there's a part of it here. Let me see if I can zoom in. There's a part of it that says, good tidings we bring to you and your kin, good tidings for Christmas and a happy new year. And I'm sure that whoever wrote this Christmas carol probably got those words from the scriptures. And so I did a search because I know that I had heard them in the scriptures before. And it kind of comes in 2 different ways. You have good tidings Okay, and I did a search in the Scripture Citation Index, which you can search all the scriptures for words and phrases. And here they all are, all the times that it appears in the scriptures. And actually, it's 17 times of all numbers. And then you can also look for glad tidings, which is synonymous. It's the same thing. And let me just show you how it shows up in the scriptures. I'm not going to go over every example, but I was actually surprised to see it show up in Isaiah 40. We've recently talked about this because the last hymn of the General Conference was from Handel's Messiah, called "And the Glory of the Lord," and that comes from this, from verse 5. "And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord hath spoken it." And then you just go down a few more verses to verse 9, and it says, so that's obviously, excuse me, that's obviously in reference to the second coming. And then a few verses later, it says, "O Zion, that bringest good tidings, get thee up into the high mountain, O Jerusalem, that bringest good tidings, lift up thy voice with strength, lift it up, be not afraid. Say unto the cities of Judah, behold your God." Right? So this is like in a second coming sense. You also find this in the first time that it shows up in the New Testament is in Luke chapter 1. This is the story of Zacharias and his wife, and being told that she was going to bear John. They were going to have a son, and it'd be John the Baptist. Verse 19, "And the angel answering said unto him, I am Gabriel, that stand in the presence of God, and am sent to speak unto thee, and to shew thee these glad tidings." And then I have one example and of course, after that came John the Baptist, but also Christ. So glad tidings leading up to Christ coming, in this case, into mortality. And then in the Book of Mormon, the first time that it shows, well, am I right? Is it the first time that it shows up in the Book of Mormon? I can't remember. Yeah. The first time that it shows up in the Book of Mormon, Mosiah chapter 3, verse 3. "And he said unto me, Awake, and hear the words which I shall tell thee. For, behold, I am come to declare unto you the glad tidings of great joy." I don't know why I didn't highlight this. I meant to. Verse 5, "For behold, the time cometh, and is not far distant, that with power the Lord omnipotent, who reigneth, who was and is from all eternity to all eternity, shall come down from heaven among the children of men, and shall dwell in a tabernacle of clay, and shall go forth amongst men, working mighty miracles, such as healing the sick, raising the dead, causing the lame to walk, the blind to receive their sight, and the deaf to hear, and curing all manner of diseases." So again, glad tidings, from what I could tell, with most of these scriptures that came up, glad tidings or good tidings is usually in association with Christ coming, whether it's the first time he came or the second coming. Okay. So Elder Stevenson, he talked about these 4 big missionary opportunities. I think that they could be before or they could be after the second coming. We know that there's going to be a lot of missionary work to do after the second coming. And these things may play into it, right? Then he talks about glad tidings. Glad tidings. So, all right. Well, that's it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.